Irvine, California. They had plans to make millions with a suppository they believed would prevent the transmission of the AIDS virus. 2 weeks ago, that all changed. Ford's partner, James Riley, was shot in the face in the company parking lot. He survived, and police focused their investigation on his partner, Dr. Ford. Before police could question Ford, he committed suicide.
The people who knew Larry Ford in his neighborhood, they had no idea what he was up to, that he was working with the South African Germ Warfare Program. Larry Ford was messing around with chemical biological warfare agents, and he was mutating germs. He had perfected these germs and mutated them to the point that they had absolutely no known antidotes. No known antidotes. They're in the house, there are cops going in there. What do you do?
Fitzpatrick dialed the police to warn them.
We checked the home, we found some 20 to 30 of these baby food jar-sized containers. We found a half-liter bottle, and we removed these substances. We've sent them to a laboratory. They're still being tested. We still don't know what they are.
So what was Larry Ford up to? And on whose behalf was he working?
Larry was a wonderful fellow, mad as a hatter. He used to rock up in South Africa, having flown intercontinental flights with a trousers pocket full of goodies in sealed vials that he claimed were new and wonderful organisms and could do the most wonderful things on Earth.
Larry Ford had mutated cholera, typhoid, anthrax, botulism, bubonic plague, and had also come up with germs that he called kaffir-killing germs. Kaffir, as you may know, in Afrikaans, is the equivalent of the N-word. So these were germs that were specifically engineered to kill only black people.
In other words, an ethnic biological weapon. Had Project Coast really gone this far?
From the beginning, this idea of can we find a way to control the size of the black population was considered one of the most important areas of research. It got even more important over time as the size of the black population and the seriousness of the uprisings increased. So that's one reason why they got into genetic modification, research into is there a way to have contraceptives that could somehow basically sterilize blacks without them knowing it, and kind of all kinds of what at the time, or in hindsight, seemed like pretty far out research.
There was some talk about an ethnic weapon Project Coast working on that was, quote, black bomb.
That was great, yeah, that was the most fun I've had in my life. That whole episode of the ethnic weapon was very well set out in court, in the court papers. What happened is we had the objective to synthesize a certain protein that was in sperm for contraceptive purposes. The objective was that if you could immunize a woman against sperm, then you would make her infertile. We were asked to do this by another country who had a...
It's not just the Western world that has the scientific know-how to beat the virus. In Senegal, a laboratory has used its AIDS and Ebola experience to develop a $1 COVID-19 testing kit. Al Jazeera's Nicholas Hawk has more.
Senegal is doing what most countries can't, testing everyone, symptoms or not, entering a health center for the novel coronavirus. It has no shortage of testing kit thanks to this lab at the Institut Pasteur. Researchers are developing a $1 quick diagnostic kit, originally made to test for dengue fever. Patients drop blood or saliva onto the devices and wait for a bloodline to appear, like a pregnancy test, explains researcher Amadou Sall.
There is no need for a highly equipped lab. It's a simple test that can be done anywhere. The idea is to rapidly produce 2 to 4 million kits, not just for us, but for African countries, so that we can detect and isolate patients quickly.
The sick are administered a cheap anti-malarial drug called chloroquine, commonly found in sub-Saharan Africa where malaria is endemic. With only 50 ventilator machines for 16 million people, Senegalese engineers are using a 3D printing machine to produce more. While imported ventilators cost $16,000, this one is just $60. Senegal is counting the cost, and it's paying off. More than a month into the outbreak, the small West African nation suffered only 2 deaths, with most patients treated healed. Senegal has the largest rate of recovery in patients infected with the coronavirus in Africa, the 3rd in the world, ahead of countries like the United States and France. And while it has a tiny health budget compared to those countries, it has a wealth of experience in dealing with infectious diseases and outbreaks.
I think it's a very nasty question, and I think it's a very bad signal that you're putting out to the American people.
Mr. President, Carolyn Terry, Chicago Defender. Today is my last White House press briefing. Thank you for taking my question. The coronavirus is disproportionately affecting people of color, and they're dying at twice the rate of white people. What do you have to say to the millions of hardworking Americans and underserved communities who fear the economy will reopen to their detriment?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Today is my last day at work. Why are you such a clown?
I don't want to comment on that right now. Yeah.
You knew about this since January. And now you're trying to stand up there and tell me what a good job you did? You got more blood on your hands than Carol Baskin, allegedly.
Be nice.
It's not my job to be nice. It is my job to report the news. Brother, stand up to this man. Now you put Surgeon General Adams in the sunken place.
I believe they call me a racist because I did that.
You, the only U.S. president who couldn't denounce Nazis. I wonder where they got that idea.
I don't want to comment on that right now.
Here's what I want you to do. Round up your little task force, start calling Deborah doctor because she's a doctor too, and have them remind you that the job of the President of the United States is working for the people of the United States, be they black, white, or in your case, orange. Oh, and that's not me being nasty. You don't want to see nasty. You scared of CNN? Wait till you see Black Twitter.
Thank you very much.
I'm leaving. You better run, brother.
Well, for more on this, joining us is Dr. Jiro Baidara, who is from the GP Delivered Quickly service. So thank you very much indeed for being with us. First of all, tell us what we know about this disproportionate impact of the outbreak on BMA people.
Absolutely. So a recent audit of 2,000 cases in ITU showed that 35% of these were from Black, Asian and minority ethnic populations, compared to 13% of the population as a whole, which is white British. And that's a very startling statistic. It first came to my attention because clearly I was taking note of any doctor or nurse who was falling to the COVID-19 virus. And many of these seem to, again, be Black or Asian, and I could not see a reason for the disparity.
What reasons have you considered? Because it's not, for example, that people from that background, those backgrounds are more represented in frontline services. Could that be a reason?
It is. So, as I said, Black and Asian and minority ethnic communities make up 13% of the UK population, but nearly 20% of NHS workers are from those ethnicities. So doctors, nurses, laundry workers, catering staff, etc. So there's potential for more exposure to the virus. There's also socio-economic factors. So Black and Asian communities tend to live in more overcrowded housing in less affluent areas as well. And that leads to it because you find that there'll be multiple members of different generations living within the same household. So that makes social distancing very difficult, if not impossible. If you look at transport workers as well, I think nearly a quarter of those working in Transport for London, the tube and the bus drivers who continue to work throughout the crisis to keep the capital going. And I'm sure it's the same or very similar elsewhere in the country, these are also from Black and Asian communities. So there are socio-economic factors, but actually when you look at levels of vitamin D suppression in these populations, I wondered whether that was the cause, and that's the advice I'm giving now for members of the Black and Asian community to consider vitamin D supplements.
Okay, tell us about that. I mean, where do you get vitamin D from, and why? What do you mean when you talk about vitamin D suppression in BAME communities?
So the reason I mention it is because of clearly there's a higher level of melanin in the skin of Black and Asian people, and that's to protect their skin from the sun and from the harmful effects of UV rays. And in European populations, we've lost melanin, so we can absorb more vitamin D. So it's not really a problem if you come from a very hot and sunny country. Despite the high level of pigment in the skin, you'll still be able to absorb lots of vitamin D. And it's absorbed and made in the skin, and it helps clearly with bone strength, but also it plays a pivotal role in our immunity as well. So we know that there tends to be low levels in Black and Asian people, and that also seems to lend to increased risk of respiratory problems and complications, which is probably the reason why it's playing such a major part, or maybe playing such a major part, in the current pandemic.
Because obviously the socioeconomic factors presumably wouldn't affect the senior doctors from BAME backgrounds that we've seen who sadly have been killed during this epidemic.
Well, no, that was my point exactly. That's the point that made me go and research why else there may be an issue, basically. So I felt exactly the same, that the same level of exposure would occur regardless of your ethnicity as a doctor or a nurse in the front line. And if you look for whatever other reasons there must be, the vitamin D question really jumps to mind. So very few Black and Asian people take vitamin D supplements in this country. We know that for sure. And we also know from BMJ reports, there was one in 2017, that taking a vitamin D supplement is much more likely to reduce the progression of a serious chest infection into pneumonia. So you can extrapolate. There's been a recent PubMed article which specifically cites the use of vitamin D supplementation in the COVID-19 outbreak as a way of perhaps reducing the susceptibility for BAME people.
Dr. Bayada, thank you very much indeed. So the advice is take vitamin D supplements, particularly if you've come from those communities. This is Sky News. Coming up.
This is Luton for representing.
This is a Sergeant for straight from Ghana.
Big up I Just Start. I'm Black Radio.
This is Jolly for representing from Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, I Just Stars. This is Impress Nelly representing for Houston, Texas, saying keep it locked on I'm Locked Radio.
Hey, 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 hey. Yeah, man, I Just Start. This is Fire to representing.
Hey yo, make them know I Just Stars alone a play. Yeah, I Just Stars. I Victory alongside Empress Nelly representing for Black Star International. You get me?
Tune in, family, and feel the vibe. Boom! Hey, 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 hey.